Hospital indemnity sales don't have to be complicated. In this episode, we're sitting down with our agent Andrew Price to talk about his real-world process in which he confidently closes multiple GTL policies every month. Whether you're new to cross-selling or you just need to sharpen your pitch, this video is for you. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so that you never miss another notification when NCC uploads new content. Let's get into it.
Absolutely. Do you ever use that consumer video, Andrew, with your presentations?
No. So a big part of what I do in every aspect of what I do is keeping things as simple as possible. Um, so I never use like canned video presentations or anything like that. I'm old school in that I have a legal pad and I walk people through it with a legal pad. And I think the more complicated you make it, the more people get glassy eyed. And so when you just make it like as simple as possible, and the thing about GTL is you don't have to sell it. All you have to do is offer it. And that's it. I don't think I've ever actually sold a GTL policy. It's just simply, okay, I'm going to offer it to every client as long as it's I don't offer it to supplement clients. I don't offer it to SNP clients because I don't think it's appropriate or I don't think it's needed. But everyone else, I'm going to offer it whether I think they should have it or not. It's not really for me to make that decision for them, and that's an injustice to the client. And so I'm just going to offer it. And by offering it, you're going to sell 1 out of 3 people.
I like your what you said there, Andrew, as far as you just offer it. So how do you, if you don't mind me asking the question, how do you position that within your presentation to where, because I think this is another thing that agents get hung up on is, well, I've already done the Medicare presentation. I don't want to stay longer and do a hospital indemnity presentation. So how do you merge the two to where you just walk right in on it? Does that make sense?
It does, yes. So the way I position myself is I don't position myself as a United Healthcare agent or a Humana agent or anything like that. My title when I talk to people is I'm a retirement advisor. And so I try to be holistic and mentally before I go into an appointment, my only goal is to leave that house or leave that client if they come to my office in a better position than before they met me. Now, whether that's selling them a Medicare plan, whether it's a supplement or advantage plan or drug plan or whatever, or it's just educating them a little bit on the plan that they have and that they're good on. And so by doing that, I have a phrase, and Titus kind of said it, most people want the most insurance for the least amount of money. And that's the very nuts and bolts, the basics of what people want. And so I kind of start there. And so I always do a Medicare presentation, like I call it Medicare 101. And I take my legal pad, say, this is Medicare A and B. This is what a supplement is. This is what an advantage plan is. And this is, the ins and outs of a drug plan. Every single appointment, whether they're, 75 and they've been on Medicare for 10 years or, they're 64 and going on Medicare the first time. I always want to set up a foundation of knowledge that we have some kind of common ground to what I'm talking about. Because if I go in there and I start, pitching a plan, pitching benefits, then I'm just a salesman. And so I'm not just a salesman, I'm a retirement advisor. And so I set up that foundation. Then I kind of figure out with them, okay, are we going to go down the supplement road or are we going to go down the advantage road? And that's the only thing that I really don't make a recommendation on. I will sometimes if that person really can't make that decision, But most people, they'll say, yes, I really want a supplement, or, I want the best bang for the buck. And that's how I position supplements and advantage plans. I say supplements are Cadillac plans. It's the most insurance you can get, but it's also the most money. And there's also cons like, everything's separate. You have to have separate, dental coverage, vision coverage, prescription coverage, all that's separate. But it's the best coverage you can get. The advantage plans are what I call the best value, the best bang for the buck. And that's what most people want. And then that leads into, most people want the most insurance for the least amount of money. And then the way I go into my Medicare Advantage presentation is I start with their drugs, and then I look at their doctors. So, I look at their prescriptions. I figure out, okay, I have 20 different options that this person could go with. Let's narrow it down to one. And then so I'll look at their drugs, and that will usually tell me, okay, where we're going. Are we going with Humana or United, Blue Cross, or whatever it may be? Then I double check their doctors to make sure all their doctors are in network. And then I say, okay, based on what you've told me, I think this plan would be a good fit for you. Let me walk you through it. Then I walk them through, the summary of benefits. And most of the time, the way I transition to it at the end, I tell them, okay, does this sound like a good plan? So you're initiating that close, that you're getting them to say, okay, yes, what you've showed me, I think is a good fit for me. So I get that, soft close, that we're going to go with that plan. And then I transition and say, okay, a plan like this, we'll say a zero plan, is usually the most popular route to go. The biggest risk or the biggest cost associated with these advantage plans or these zero plans is the hospital. And then I ask them, have you ever heard of a hospital indemnity plan? And almost everybody says no. And then I'll say, well, have you ever heard of AFLAC? And then usually people quack at me. And I say, AFLAC is an indemnity plan. The way an indemnity plan works is it pays you cash based on how the policy is set up. And so what we can do is we can actually cover your biggest copay, your hospital, with an indemnity plan. Let me show you how this works. And then that's when I take out my legal pad, and then I'll write, I should have an example right here. I wrote one yesterday.
I like how you're setting it up, because as I'm thinking about like agents and whether they're on the phone or whether they're in someone's house, this is simple enough to sit and just, like you said, this is what you have. This is your biggest cost. Let me show you how that may be avoidable. And then you get right into it. And
Right. So I don't know how well you guys can see this, but this person, I sold this one yesterday. I sold United Healthcare 002, which is our zero plan here in East Tennessee, and they have a $295 copay. So I always set it up just like this. If their copay is $225 a day for days 1 through 4 or whatever it is, and then I show them, okay, if you're in the hospital for 3 days, they're going to bill you for $885. Then you're going to call me and say, hey, Andrew, I was in the hospital. You're going to get me a copy of your itemized bill. I'm going to send it up to the company, and then they're going to mail you a check for $900 to pay your $885 bill. And so then, I walk them through that, and that's really about it. I don't add a lot. I'll add an ambulance benefit to cover their ambulance as well, because it's like $1, because I am honestly trying to give them the most coverage for the least amount of money. I don't think it's worth adding all those other benefits, except maybe cancer. So the two biggest costs that people will go through with an Advantage plan is either the hospital copay or if they go through chemo. And so, by adding a $5,000 lump sum cancer rider on there, then that, takes care of the chemo. And so that's really all it is just saying, hey, this is the most insurance you can get for the least amount of money monthly, and just offering it. I don't hard sell it. I don't try to, you know, do a lot. Um, the biggest pushback I get is they'll say, okay, well, that's $30 a month. You know, that times 12 is $360. And then you can kind of see their brain, you know, the gears working. And, you know, I'll usually say, you know, it's about 1 day in the hospital is about what you would pay for the annual premium. And then I'll just say, you know, hey, this is insurance. No one wants bad, because people say, well, I haven't been in the hospital in years. Well, that's why you have, you know, insurance. You know, that's why you have car insurance, not because you're thinking you're going to get in a car wreck, but when you do get in a car wreck, then, you know, you're not, you know, thousands of dollars out of pocket. Now, if you want to get more technical, you know, then, and this is what I'm sharing my screen here. Okay. So this is what I would call plan one and plan two back in the day. So this is United Healthcare. So this plan is $0. This plan is $41. If you look through the differences in copays, they're really not that different. And if you add up $41 a month, you know, that's what, 480 or $492 a year. And you look at the difference in copays. And when you use the insurance, you're not going to really save $492 a year in the difference in copays. You know, the big things, you know, you got a $120 difference in outpatient surgeries. And then inpatient hospital, you have $175 a day versus $295 a day. Well, for $30 a month, which is, you know, $10 less than this step up on the Advantage plan, you're actually going to have better coverage because you're not paying that $175 a day. You're zeroing it out because your indemnity plan is paying that $295 a day. So it's a better use of your money to go with a zero plan and then add an indemnity plan because you're going to end up in better coverage. So when you run into people and they say, yeah, I'm on United Healthcare and I'm super happy with my plan, or I'm on Humana and you're on the, you know, $80 to $100 plan that has a zero inpatient hospital copay, this is a better route to go than them staying on the plan. And what that does for the agent is it creates a Medicare Advantage sale that wasn't there before. And the beauty of that is when you're talking to the client is, you know, the formulary is the same, the network's the same. You know, when you're going from, you know, say this United Healthcare plan to this United Healthcare, you know, they're both the HMO. So it's not like we're going from a PPO to an HMO or different, anything like that. We're just, you know, going from, you know, what you would call maybe a gold plan to a silver plan or something like that. But it's just, you know, getting more technical with it to have better planning. So you're creating a sales opportunity, and then you're also for the Medicare Advantage plan, but then also for the indemnity plan as well.
When you're looking out in the field, and many agents get intimidated by this. So what if they already have a plan and they don't want to change it? So you're taking the time to actually go look and find the plan and see if it has a premium, and using that to find a zero premium plan and suggest, based upon what you currently have, we can help you save money. The agent can sell and get a commission for selling the GTL. Now they have that person as a member of their book of business, as a client now, and then offsetting the out-of-pocket expense with the GTL. So overall, they're net paying less and have less exposure to risk by using the GTL combined with a zero premium plan. I think a lot of agents miss that.
You can also use this with a give back plan as well. So I have an office in East Tennessee, and then I have an office in Florida, and I go back and forth between here and Florida all the time. In Florida, Humana has a PPO plan that has a $175 give back. The copays are higher, like the inpatient hospitals, $375 a day for days 1 through 7, whereas like a zero plan, the copays are like $125 a day for days 1 through 4. But it's a PPO down there, and the out of network is the same copays as the in network. And so really there's almost in essence no network. But then on top of that, they're getting 175 back. Well, for about $50, you can create a robust GTL plan that's going to cover all the copays. So they're still getting back $125 net after the GTL, and they have a better plan. So GTL has been an amazing planning tool in our quiver to better people's situations. I think the biggest thing is we have to retrain people of their thought process. Because if you say to people, hey, we want you to start offering this other thing, then you're going to get pushback. There's that fear aspect, that fear of rejection. But I was thinking about our training today, or our meeting today. And when I first graduated high school, my first job, I worked at Circuit City and I sold computers. Well, our manager said, hey, we make a ton of money off accessories. So when you sell a computer, we need you to sell surge protectors and printers and printer cables and all this kind of stuff. Well, the difference there is when I sold a printer, it did not come with a USB cable. It is a pain in the butt for someone to buy something, get home and try to hook it up and not have the cable they need to make the thing work. And so there's a difference in, hey, we need to make more sales versus, hey, you need to offer people the whole picture. That way they have everything they need so that they're protected. And so if we can get people in that mindset of, hey, we want to better people's situations. That's all we care about. And that's what I feel that NCC is I've never felt pressure. Hey, we need you to sell more stuff. It's always been, hey, how can we give you the tools that you can help more people? And that's what the thing I love about my job is I don't have to worry about sales. I don't have to worry about anything except helping people. And it's like this organic thing, because the more I help people, the more money I'm going to make. And the more I help people, the more those people send more people to me. And so it's this like holistic process of doing the right thing over and over and over again, and everybody wins. If people have a objection to GTL, then you need to retrain their thought process of what we're doing. We're not saying, hey, we need to make more sales, so we need to start, offering life insurance to everybody and dental insurance to everybody and all this, extra stuff so we can, bump numbers. It's a matter of, okay, we have all these tools in our quiver of ways we can help people. And one of the best ways that people can have the most insurance for the least amount of money is by going with a zero plan and then adding an indemnity plan to cover the biggest risk or the biggest cost associated with that zero plan.
Your conversion ratio that you mentioned earlier, you said what, 3 to 1 essentially. We've seen that over and over across. I've been with NCC about 5 years. So in the 5 years I've been here, we've seen when we talk specifically hospital indemnity, when it's offered consistently, that we see a 3 to 1 kind of ratio. If you're looking at numbers, if you're offering it and you have 3 meetings in a day, you'll sell one. Some days you might sell all three, but if you're offering it, it's that consistency. And I think from what I've heard, you just talking as you're talking about your process and what you do, is your mindset is this is just part of how I help you get the most amount of insurance for the least amount of cost, and it's just done. And I think that's a fantastic way to look at it.
Yeah. I mean, if you think of like a personal trainer and you're dealing with a personal trainer and he says, hey, you should be taking protein, after you work out. That's not selling you, protein, something you don't need so he can make money. You need that protein to build up your muscles where you brought it down. This is the exact same thing. This is giving people the things they need to kind of fill in the gaps the best way possible.
I loved your printer and cable analogy because that I think everybody can relate to buying some sort of electronic. They get home and they don't have everything they need to make it work. And so I think about when I had kids and I would, get birthday presents or Christmas presents and you forgot to buy batteries. And it's just frustrating. And so I can only imagine, us as agents, we're selling these to people. We're not offering to help cover their biggest expense, like you said, which is the hospital co-pays. They go and have to use their insurance, and then they're on the hook for that. And it might put them in a financial bind when we could have, had we offered that hospital indemnity policy, they may not be. So, I mean, it just, I love that analogy. I appreciate you sharing that.
I'm going to give you kudos to something that I did when I first started selling insurance. When I first got started, we used the Medicare and U book. My manager said, take the Medicare and U book along with the summary of benefits of the plan. And much similar to your example, I would always turn the book around. Like 10 pages in, there's the page with the Med Sub and Medicare, and they're side by side. It has a little hospital up here, part A, part B, and how you use your notepad and you just jot down the numbers so they can actually transparently see the visualization and follow the math. I think that is a excellent high level sales tip, that if you take that little bit of time and write it out, or they could write it out and let them do the calculations so they can see where the money is going to come from the hospitalization expense. And then, well, most of the time you go to the hospital, more often than not, you went to the emergency room and took an ambulance there, which too can be covered by the GTL. So I just want to chime in a little bit and say that is a gold mine of a tip to help close it, because the person actually visually is more engaged.
The other aspect of GTL is I've probably been selling it for maybe 12 years. In that 12-year process, I mean, I have no idea how many claims that I've helped people with, but it's super easy. And so not only do I sell a lot of these, I see how well they work. So the problem with insurance is people get mad when they think it does something it doesn't do. When people have an assumption or they think it does something, and then when they come to use it, it doesn't work that way, that's when people get mad. The beauty of GTL is it's worked exactly like it's supposed to. When people go to the hospital, it pays. It also pays for every 24 hours they're in the hospital for outpatient observation. And so even if they're in the hospital for 2 or 3 days because they had chest pain, but they didn't have a heart attack, it's still going to pay, 2 or 3 days based on that 24-hour, cycle. And so when you compare that to, say, like the Humana plan, that's about $100 a month, that has a zero inpatient hospital. If they're in outpatient observation, they still pay a couple $100. So with this, for every 24 hours they're in there, it's going to pay as well. So it's actually giving them better hospital coverage. Now, part of my presentation, I do tell them the 2 things in the small print that I feel like they need to know about to prevent them thinking it's going to do something it doesn't do. One is it doesn't cover pre-existing for the first 6 months, but after 6 months, it does cover pre-existing. And then 2, they can make 1 claim every 60 days for an inpatient hospitalization. And so if they were in the hospital 2 times within a 60-day period, we would make the claim on the longer stay instead of the shorter stay. That way they get more money. And so I tell them that up front. That way they know going into it, hey, if I have congestive heart failure and I'm going on, and I'm 66, there's no health questions, so they can get it. There's no underwriting. But if I have a heart attack in the first 6 months, it's not going to cover that hospitalization. So, but after that, it is going to cover it. So that's the other aspect of it. That's one of the things I get really frustrated with dental insurance. I saw a lot of Cigna dental insurance with my Medicare supplements, and it's a train wreck trying to get the dental insurance to actually work. I don't run into that with GTL. GTL does exactly what it says it'll do. Now, if we're in the underwriting process, if they're 70 or older, we got to make sure we're clear on those underwriting questions, because, if they have COPD and they don't disclose that, and then, GTL doesn't pay because they didn't answer those questions right, that's a different story. But, most people are going to be in that 64 and a half to 69 range that I'm riding, because I ride a lot of 265s. But I can tell you, after years and years and years of selling GTL, it's worked exactly like I've told people it is. And as an agent, that's really important, because I don't want to sell someone something and then think it's going to work a certain way, and when they need it, it's not there to do the things that I told them it was going to do. So that's another big aspect, is we're giving people an actual solution. We're not just, selling them something.
Last part, just kind of piggybacking off of what you just said there. Andrew, tell me, I sent you an email, and you was like, man, you right on time. I actually just processed a claim for a lady at the top of July or late June. I forgot what the set of circumstances were. Can you just touch on that just a little bit?
So my favorite one is this older couple where the wife wanted it and the husband did not. And so they bought it. But every year when we did the annual review for AEP, he's like, Andrew, I think I want to cancel that hospital insurance. And there again, I'm not hard selling him to keep it. I'm like, you can do anything you want to do. The reason we did this is protect you against, the hospital cost. And then the wife would chime in and say, yeah, honey, let's keep it. Well, in 2020, he got COVID. He ended up on a ventilator in the IC, or the COVID wing, for 3 months. He survived, but it paid, I set GTLs up to pay 10 days. And so he got a $3,000 check to pay his $1,500 bill. And after that, he never said another thing about, wanting to cancel it. I had a couple that the husband texted me while they were in the hospital, and they said, hey, Andrew, my wife fell and broke her hip. We've been here 3 days, and they're about to do hip surgery, and we're going to go home tomorrow. We're really scared because we're seeing all these, doctors coming in and out, and we know how expensive hospitals, how many thousands of dollars is this hospital stay going to cost us? And I said, well, based on your plan, you're going to pay $250 a day for the first 5 days you're there. So if you're there 4 days, then you're going to get a bill for $1,000. But if you remember, we added that hospital insurance that covers your copay. So you're going to get a bill for $1,000, and then we're going to send you a check for $1,000. So this hospital stay isn't going to cost you anything. This was a text message, but you could almost feel the relief in that. One, by knowing, okay, by having the Advantage plan, we're not going to be out $10,000 or $50,000 for this hospital stay. We're going to pay $250 a day. But then on top of that, that $30 that they've been paying for this hospital insurance is going to fully cover their hospital bill. So they're going to walk away from this hospitalization, $0. So the peace of mind that gives people is a huge asset to be able to know that, hey, people on a fixed income are going to have to come up with $1,000, which there again is going to translate to not making that decision for people. Because if you look at someone's finances and you think, okay, they're only drawing $1,600 a month. They can't afford another $30. Well, if you make that assumption, and then they go to the hospital, and now they got a $750 hospital bill because they were in the hospital for 3 days. Did you really help them by not offering that because you assumed that they couldn't afford it, or you were scared to offer it because you didn't think that they could afford it? It is a injustice as an advisor to make that decision for that person.
So true. And then last part here, I know when we talk, one of the things that I'm taking away from this is that you're doing this as a advisor perspective, and these are the services that your clients need to get them whole as much as possible if and when something should happen. But tell us a little bit about on the other side of this as a agent and from the perspective of commission. So many agents ask, well, how much do I make? Can I make some pretty good money doing GTL? I know you shared it with me. If you can give me just like we talked about your Ford truck and your truck note. Can you touch on that just a quick little bit?
Yes. So one of the good things about GTL is it does pay, the way it pays is it pays 50% of your commission up front, and then in 6 months it pays 1/6 of the commission for the next six, or the other 50% over a 6-month period. So if your commission, we'll say for easy math, is $240, you're going to get $120 the next week. And then in 6 months from now, you'll get $20 a month for the next 6 months. And then after that, then you're going to get a residual. So just my own story, I've always wanted a truck, and I've always wanted a Jeep Wrangler. And so when it was time for me to buy a car, I decided to buy a Jeep Wrangler. So I bought a Jeep, I paid it off, and it's still a great great running vehicle. Well, I still needed a truck, because people need trucks, to haul stuff off and to do work. And so I didn't want to trade in my Jeep. I wanted to buy a truck in addition. Well, on top of that, I had not been offering GTL, and I'm a very competitive person. And one of the other agents within SFG we had this within 1 or 2 sales at AEP on Medicare plans, but he blew me out of the water on GTL. And I knew that I just simply wasn't offering it. And so that kind of got to me. So I was like, you know what? Starting in January, well, because it was January, I said, you know what? I'm going to start offering GTL to everybody because I had just gotten lazy and stopped doing it. Well, by simply offering it, I was noticing that my commissions were at least $500 a month. So financially, I thought, okay, you know what? I can buy this truck simply by offering GTL and basically not have a car payment. And so in June of that year, I went and bought a truck for about $25,000. A nice used truck, had like 70,000 miles on it. And I tracked what my GTL commissions were all year, and it usually almost doubled what my car payment was. So on that aspect, it fully paid for a car. So, depending on where you're at in the Medicare commission process, at that point in time, I had made it. I had enough residuals to cover my bills and things like that. And so offering GTL was a extra commission that I just wasn't getting before because I simply wasn't offering it. Now, years ago, I was in the business when they stopped paying us during AEP. I was in the business maybe like 3 years, so my residual base hadn't been built up to support my bills. And so every sale paid a bill. And so when they came to us, or they didn't come to us, they just said, hey, CMS, this is how it is. We're not going to pay you during AEP. GTL, bought my gas and paid my groceries and bought my kids Christmas, that AEP season, because we weren't getting, paid on our Medicare sales, but GTL was still paying. So there again, it's a win-win situation. You're helping the client, but it pays good. I think it pays 60% of what annual is. I may be off a little bit on that, but I think whatever the annual premium is, we get paid 60%. And then the way it pays out, I believe it pays 50% up front. And then in 6 months, it pays the rest of it, throughout the year. And then you have that residual after that. But you keep on selling those. I have probably 400 maybe GTL, clients on the books. So I'm getting, about $500 in residuals each month on my GTL clients that I've sold, the past 10 years or so.
Man, that's an awesome story. Brandon, what would anything you want to add or something that you would find beneficial?
Yeah, no, I really have appreciated the conversation. If we could, Andrew, if you don't mind to share your screen again and go through the the GTL process, just so an agent can see it, if you don't mind. Do you use the fill the gaps tool that they have, or do you just go in and kind of what you want to set up for them?
Well, the way I do it is I mirror the policy. And so I don't use that tool. Um, I think as agents, we're kind of creatures of habit.
Hmm.
And so I've always done my presentation the way I've done it. And so I haven't incorporated that. So the other aspect of this is it is extremely easy. So they have an app. I don't use the app. I do it on my iPad through their website with the client. But you basically just log in, quote, and submit. And so, let's say this is a T65 that I'm dealing with right now. So you just put their, I would put their name and everything. But you for the quote, you just need their sex and their birthday and their state. So I'm in Tennessee. And then I do this Advantage plus Elite. And then the way I set it up for 10 days. And I do it to mirror whatever their copay is. So the one I sold yesterday, I sold them a United Healthcare plan, and the copay was $295 a day for days 1 through 5. So I set this up $300 a day for days 1 through 10. And then I add an ambulance rider to cover whatever their copay is. So their copay on that plan is $150. So I just bump it up to $200. And if you look at the difference, it's only $1.30 a month. And so that's why I had that, because there again, it's almost like a disservice to the client to not add that. Now, if you go in here and add all this other stuff, it's really going to jump that price up. But this is my nuts and bolts. What I do every time is I match what their copay is. And that's it. And then you just hit apply. It shows you the price right here. I have it sent directly to the insured, so I don't have to deliver it. And then you put their information in. And so you just fill in the blanks. You don't have to put a beneficiary in there. No, we're not replacing anything. That would only be as if they had like an Aflac plan and we were replacing it. Most times they're losing their employer coverage and they're going on Medicare, and that's it. And then everything's digital. So you type, Joe Client, signed in Johnson City, Tennessee. And then you put your information in. And then you It's an auto draft. You can set this up. Some people don't like auto draft, but it's very rare. Like in the past 5 years, I probably had maybe 5 people not want to do auto draft. And you can bill it quarterly. But most people, will do the auto draft. So you just ask them for their banking information and put that information in here. And then another part of the benefit of doing this is it helps start it helps kind of lock in that client, because I deal with a lot of T65s, and I may meet with people 6 months before they go on to Medicare. Well, we can't do their Medicare plan then, but we can do this now, and it'll start and it'll work just like it does, whether they're on Medicare or not, because this has nothing to do with Medicare. Well, what that does is it kind of solidifies that person as your client. Because, if I go in there and I meet that person, and then, let's say I pitch United Healthcare, I pitch Humana or whatever, and they're like, yeah, that sounds great. Well, there's probably been times where that person got a phone call and kind of got talked into signing up over the phone for the plan that you sold them mentally, but it was too early. Well, by selling them this, in the client's mind, you're their agent because you've already sold them that policy. And so so the way I set these up is I set them up to start whenever we do it. And almost always I don't run into an issue with that.
Probably won't be able to get past that page just because we don't have fake bank information. We won't put regular in there. But the next page I think is the finish, the signature and apply page, correct?
Okay. Yes. And so on the signature page, there's 3 ways they can do it. You can do a PIN, and you type in a cell phone number and it sends them a text with a PIN code, and they just give you that PIN, and that's it. The other one is a phone call. Well, they'll get a phone call. I don't do that one. And then they've just added a third one that's a signature pad. And so for the past years, I've been using the PIN, where it sends a text to them and they tell me the number on the text, and we complete it that way. Since they've added the signature pad, I've started doing the signature pad on my iPad, because in my opinion, that solidifies the sale with the client when they actually sign it. So I think they get a little bit more tangible ownership in the policy when they sign it. But either way is fine. But that's it. So now this is for someone that's 64 and a half to 69. You'll notice in that application that there wasn't any health questions. We just went through it and that's it. Now, if they're under 64 and a half or they're 70 or older, then there's going to be health questions. So if we look at someone that is turning 75 and we do this, one, the price is going to be higher. It's not going to be 29, whatever it was. It's going to be 37 because they're 10 years older. So the price is based on their age. Now, on that note, GTL, ever since I've sold it, has never had a rate increasement. So they can have a rate increasement, but they never have. And so I tell people that as well as part of my closing is, hey, this is what the premium is. They've never had a rate increasement, but you can actually cancel this at any time. This has nothing to do with Medicare. This is just extra insurance to help you. So I'm trying to be as transparent and honest with that client as I can. But they've never had a rate increasement. And so when we go to apply here for someone that's outside that guaranteed issue window, we're going to go through some health questions. And they're very basic. So it's, if they're between the ages of 64 and a half and 70 as the date of the application, then you can skip these questions, which the website will do that automatically. If you're doing a paper app, then you would just skip it. But this person isn't. So we're going to go through these health questions. They're super basic. Have you been in the hospital or in home healthcare in the last 3 months? So most of the time that's a no. Past 12 months, have you had a heart attack, congestive heart failure, stroke, TIA, heart surgery, bypass, peripheral vascular disease, malignant melanoma, or cancer? Past 12 months, COPD, COLD, emphysema, chronic bronchitis, diabetes with insulin, dementia, Alzheimer's, chronic liver, chronic kidney disease. Now, diabetes with insulin, that's a big kicker there. So one, I don't want to offer this to someone that I know that's not going to get approved. So part of my sales process is, I'm trying to get an idea of what their overall health is to know what to recommend to them. But they've told me what their drugs are. So if they tell me they're on insulin, then when I get to this portion and they're over 70, I'm not going to even talk about GTL because I don't want to, because one, I know that they're not going to get it. So there's not a use in creating this emotional, situation where, I'm offering something and that they get declined. So if I hear something, and I may even ask health questions in that process, kind of fishing for that information to know if I should offer GTL or not. So if they tell me, they've had some heart issues, then I might say, have you had any heart issues in the last 12 months? That way I already know it. That way we're not, declining them. In the past 12 months, been advised to have a inpatient stay that has not been done yet. Now notice that this is inpatient stay. So this is not an outpatient surgery. So on a med sup application, the question is, has it been recommended to have a surgery? With GTL, it's an inpatient stay. So if they have a cataract surgery coming up, then that would, answer that question no, because that's not an inpatient stay. Whereas if I'm selling someone a med sup and we're going through underwriting health question, that's a different question than what GTL offers. And then AIDS or HIV. So those are really super basic health questions. So it's kind of few and far between people, that wouldn't qualify for this, even people that have health issues. That's another selling point to this is if you're dealing with someone that's, say turning 65 or in their, late 60s, and they have insulin dependent, diabetes, by being able to offer this now, you can say, hey, you're in a small window where you can actually get this plan. Once you're 70, you won't be able to get this later on because you won't be able to pass the health questions. There again, you need to drive home that pre-existing clause for 6 months because you want to, be transparent with them. But it's super easy, and it's very rare that people would not get approved for this. But that's it. Those basic health questions, or no health questions at all, and they're approved. And it gives you, once you finish the application, it gives you the policy number, and I always write that down. And I don't even use the brochure when I'm talking about GTL. All I use is this white piece of paper that shows what their copay is and what their what the GTL policy is. So keeping it as basic as possible, just bare bones. And another aspect of this is people can be insurance poor. So that, if you're hesitant to sell this because you don't think it's needed, that's why I sell it the way I do, is because I don't want them to be insurance poor. I don't want to add all these bells and whistles for something that they're really not ever going to use. I try to just keep it basic, cover the most important things. That way, when they do go to the hospital, they're not having to come up with, $900, $1,200, $1,500, when they only draw $1,600 a month or $1,800 a month. So it's been a very good tool as an agent to be able to help a lot of people. And I can tell you, every single person that buys this policy, when they use it, they absolutely love it. And it's so affordable for people that don't use it. I mean, it's insurance. And so there's always, pros and cons to everything. But the pro to going with a zero plan or a rebate plan and adding a hospital indemnity plan is the best use of someone's money versus, having a really high premium advantage plan. I had someone call me in an AEP last year, and they were on the Blue Cross Diamond plan, which is like $100 plan.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, hey, Andrew, we saw you on TV talking about Medicare, and we just wanted to do a review. And I looked at a few things, and I said, you're not going to believe this, but the Zero Advantage plan, the Sapphire plan, is actually a better plan than the Diamond plan that you have right now. And then I told them why, and they were shocked. And they're like, you are 100% right. The Sapphire plan, especially with an indemnity plan, is a whole lot better plan than the Diamond plan. So I love GTL because every aspect of it. It's a good company. It pays out when it's supposed to. It's easy to sign people up through their website. It's all digital. You can do it in about 3 minutes. And then it gives people the best use of their money in their insurance planning process to have the most insurance for the least amount of money. It's just simply, you have to offer it. And it's an injustice to your clients if you don't offer it. This isn't about increasing your sales. Isn't about, making the most of every appointment. This is doing the very basics of being a good advisor. And I wholeheartedly believe that.
A couple things you said there really struck home. I think the biggest thing was you're helping educate your members with what they have versus what they potentially could have with utilizing everything that's available to them through you. Meaning, so that like that Blue Cross example was a great example. They were on what they thought was the best plan, but by educating them as far as using the insurance and combining the second plan with an indemnity plan, getting a better coverage. Because if you just looked at plans, name wise, they had the best top dollar. They're paying, like you said, probably $100 a month for that plan, but you could reduce their out of pocket monthly and get better coverage. And it's more of an education piece because they didn't know that was out there. The other thing that I love that you said was the time that it takes to complete, especially through GTL. GTL, for those that are watching the video, GTL is not the only carrier out there that sells hospital indemnity, but they are probably, in my aspect, one of the easiest carriers to do business with. But like you said, we just saw you go through that application. You already have their information. You're putting it in 3, 5 minutes tops. You're done. So there is no, I'm going to extend my meeting so long trying to explain this. You've already positioned it in your Medicare Advantage presentation. You're filling the gaps as you're presenting this. You're offering it. They say, yes, I want to do it. Boom, we're in the application. We're done. You can be finishing up your wrap up conversation and kind of just shoot the breeze while that's being filled out. Uh, it just sounds like it's super easy. Your testimony as far as what you've accomplished with it, plus your beneficiaries' testimonies of how they've used it, and just I guess for me, from listening to you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you enjoy the peace of mind that your members get from when they use it and they get their bills covered. They're not out of pocket anything. It's a peace of mind for them, but also you sleep easy at night too because you've done what's best for that member. Am I right on that?
100%. And it's kind of funny because I'll deal with people because there was times where I simply just didn't offer it just because I was being lazy. And I'll deal with their spouse now, and we'll be going through things and I'll pitch it. And I almost feel guilty because I didn't tell that other spouse that I wrote, 7 years ago. They're like, well, why didn't you tell me about that? And I feel guilty now for not offering it because I do think it's a very, valuable asset for our clients. I will add something else, and that's the claims process because that's super simple as well. And so the client can do it themselves. I like to do it because it's super simple and I like taking care of my clients. So you guys just go to GTL.com. Where is it? File a claim. And it pulls up, the different plans. So it's a hospital indemnity claim form. And there's 2 pages. They put their basic info, why they were in the hospital, and they sign it, and then they sign a HIPAA form. So it's just those 2 pages, and then they need a form called a UB04. So the way I handle my clients is I tell them when I'm selling it. When you go to the hospital, once you get out, you call me. And I'm going to tell you to ask the hospital for a UB04 form. You bring that to me or you mail it to me or you get it to me however you want. And then I'll fill out the paperwork. I'm going to send it to GTL and then GTL is going to send you a check. And so it's super easy. You just need that claim form. Actually, I think I have one sitting on my desk somewhere here from where a client just dropped one off. Actually, it's right here. So I have one on my desk where a client swung by, signed the papers, and dropped off the form for me. And I'm going to send that to GTL, and then GTL is going to send them a check. So, so the whole process is easy.
What would you say the turnaround time is for when you submit the claim to when the beneficiary gets
I
the
would say
check?
a week or 2.
Okay.
And I've had maybe 3 or 4 issues out of hundreds
Right.
over the past years with getting claims paid. So it's very straightforward, especially if they get the correct form. Usually the problem is if they can't get a UB04 form and they send an itemized bill that doesn't have their admission date or their release date, because that's what GTL is looking for. They need to know the time and day they went in, the time and day they went out. And so if that's not on the form, that's why they ask for the UB04 is because it has that information. But if the client doesn't get that and they just send a bill and we try to send that in, then that's when it's caused a problem. But if they get that UB04 and we fill out this simple claim form, it's super easy.
Well, that'll do it for me, my friend. I appreciate you sharing all this. This is fantastic. I do think this will help agents out there that are a little hesitant to ask, or maybe from like you were, just I've offered in the past, I just kind of stopped doing it just because I just got lazy and just chose not to. So now picking up, trying to get back into the swing of things with it. So I think this will help a ton.
Thank you. Andrew, thank you again, man. I appreciate you.
So you're welcome. So I think the main thing besides going through the process and saying, hey, this is how it works. Look how simple this is, making sure that everyone knows how to do it. The only other thing that you need to do is to get people in that mindset is, hey, I need to do this every time. And once you do that, unless people are just lying to themselves, or lying to you, you're going to see those numbers just jump. And going back to computer sales and stuff like that back in the day, I sold extended warranties, and I became one of the top salesmen in Circuit City for extended warranties. And the reason I did is my manager sat down with me and we role played over and over and over again. So if you have people that are hesitant on how to present this, they need to role play with their wife, they need to role play with their kids, they need to role play with another agent, and get those cobwebs off of how to present this in a smooth manner. That way it's not stop and go, that way it's not a sales pitch, but it's just this organic flowing of information of, hey, let's get you an advantage plan that's going to cover all your needs. The biggest gap in there is the hospital. Let's cover it with this indemnity plan.
No, Andrew, thanks again. I appreciate your time. I want to send a special shout out to the whole entire team, Angie, Andrew. Simply want to add that there's a ton of value in GTL if positioned consistently, and there's value in that. Changing your mindset is what I heard several times, that this is a service that you're doing a disservice by not offering it. Practice this along with if you're an agency owner with downlines, this is a great opportunity for you to reach down to them, work with them, and have them practice this with you. If you're an agency owner and you're not selling it, you're the leader. We need you to set the example and set the bar, so they too will sell too. So they'll follow suit with you. So let's get over the fear and change the mindset and make it happen. Andrew, thank you for your time. We appreciate you, and congratulations on your success.